Giles Brown.
Let's talk.
The years of travelling anxiously, surviving fear and panic all over the world. Welcome to the topsy-turvy world of the anxious traveller, where panic strikes in the most serene situations. It is a brilliant new book by Tom Sykes. I'd like to say that Tom, hopefully, joins me live on the line now. Tom, good morning to you.
Hello, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Not too bad, thank you. Explain a little bit about why you came to write this book. And are you a globetrotter, Tom?
I am, yeah. I mean, I've been very fortunate enough to be a travel writer and journalist who's been able to travel the world for coming on to 20 years now and get paid for it, which is a great privilege. But all that time, I've also been, ironically maybe, quite an anxious person. I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder in my mid-20s, and now I'm in my mid-40s. So it's a strange kind of paradox, but I got to this point as you get older and you start to look back on your sort of earlier life, you start to think about, yeah, maybe this is something worth talking about and sharing with other people, partly because I've met so many other people with similar sorts of issues, you know, in the industry that I work in, but also friends who have served in the armed forces, friends who have worked doing a lot of business travel. So it just seemed to make sense to sort of start writing about this topic now because other people are talking about it.
But when we say sort of getting anxious about travel, we're not talking about fear of flying here, are we? Or I mean, how does it manifest itself?
Well, it's interesting. It's something I do go into into the book. There are people obviously do have fears of certain kinds of transport methods, and flying is the most common one. And I looked into the statistics with this, and there's a sort of inverse relationship between the number of people who are afraid of flying and the actual number of things that go wrong when, you know, crashes is obviously, you know, crashing is obviously the thing that people fear the most. So driving is a far more statistically more dangerous, and certainly some of the places that I go to in the book, including Lagos, Nigeria, are places where driving can be very challenging experience. Let's say half my family is Nigerian, so I've got to be careful about how I frame this. I don't want to offend anyone, but so I do deal with that. I think there are certain kinds of lower level anxieties to do with delayed trains and planes, and dealing with officious bureaucrats who seem to just want to make your life a misery because they're bored or something, and you're waiting there. Please give me that visa. Please give me my passport back. And there's a few incidents like that recounted in the book as well. So.
But I would have thought because you are a travel writer, you should be you should just brush these off, be laissez-faire, and go, oh yes, well, I'm 20 years of travelling. I'm used to these sort of things. I shouldn't be getting the jitters, as it were.
Well, the thing for me and the sort of puzzle at the heart of the book, and I'm not the only one to sort of feel like this, is that it's not as easy as sort of there being obvious triggers to what causes anxiety. For the most part, the things that trigger other people don't trigger me. I actually don't mind flying. I quite weirdly enjoy flying. I just get into a book or I watch films and I just, and in fact, I suppose growing up, with sort of not too much money, and certainly didn't do any flying when we were kids growing up. For me, I think flying and staying in hotels is a sort of incredible privilege and luxury. So weirdly, I'm not triggered by the things that might trigger other people's anxiety. For me, it's a bit more complex. And it's sort of, I can be in a situation where I'm feeling absolutely fine. I'm with friends, having great conversation, having a few drinks, having lovely food, and suddenly I'm struck by a panic attack. So that wasn't triggered by anything happening in the moment, but I've investigated. I mean, in that particular case, that particular anecdote was from the Philippines when I was working there. And what I realized was that what decided to kind of strike me at that moment was nothing to do really with the situation I was in at that time, but it was a kind of delayed grief, a kind of bereavement that I was suffering. And I kind of managed to figure this out through counseling and through doing a lot of work on myself. And so, yeah, the book is about solving that sort of puzzle of my own anxiety, because it's not so obvious what causes it.
Because if you're on a press trip, if you're on a junket, I thought I'd been on a few in my time, and you're met at the airport or the port or whatever by some PR twonk, and you're taken away to your hotel, and they go, right, here, here's your suite, and we're going to take you around. I don't know, we're going to take you around the souk, and we're going to go to watch some dancing, the whole thing. I mean, everything. You rather than being an independent traveller and arriving with a backpack and getting everything stolen, everything is sort of laid on for you. But I suppose the problem is the fact that that's when you're relaxed, and that's when the demons sort of go, aha! Just when you thought it was safe to go back to the breakfast bar, but we're going to hit you with this one out at left field.
I think that's very true. I think kind of, weirdly, there's a sort of connection between kind of boredom and predictability and anxiety for me anyway. So I haven't done a press trip for years now because I actually found that it wasn't really working for me. In fact, in the book, I talk about the press trip from hell, the press trip that made me give up press trips, because there were two journalists on that trip, and I have to be very careful. I would not name names, and I've changed certain details so they can't be, this doesn't become a scandal. Yeah. And it was the behavior of these people that put me off, because they would just, they say that travel should broaden the mind. I mean, quite the opposite had happened in the case of these people, and they were just very, very inflexible and unpleasant to our hosts and borderline xenophobic. It did make me wonder, why the hell are you a travel writer if you don't actually like traveling or foreign people and et cetera, et cetera. But so that was a cause of anxiety for me. But so was and so is the idea of a sort of guided tour and an expectation. You must be here at 9 o'clock. Then we'll take you somewhere at 9:30. And then, for me, and I think for other people, that is actually not always a very, the most mentally healthy way to travel. But as you say, for other people, it can be very, it's nice and easy, and everything is laid out for you, and you don't have to think too hard for yourself. So, horses for courses.
But in the age of the influence, you see, the old-fashioned press trip, and I remember something with a senior journalist kicking off because they didn't like their suite, and it was like, guy, you're getting meat, you're getting fed, you're getting watered, and you don't like, because it's not facing the old town, it's facing the sea. Can you just calm down a bit? But in an age of course, of social media and influencers, the old-fashioned press trip isn't. I mean, I certainly don't get the invites that I used to get all the time coming through my front door. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I was that journalist on that trip with you, Tom, and I can't remember it. That sort of happened before.
I think not. I think I'd remember, and you seem like a nice enough guy. So yeah.
So I mean, let's talk about sort of you mentioned sort of Nigerian driving, going to a different culture, different country. If you know that you are susceptible to anxiety, panic attacks, call it what you will, is there a danger that perhaps some cultures will be very understanding about it? Other cultures may not be so understanding about that. So do you have to sort of gird your loins sometimes before trips?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer in cross-cultural communication and cultural integration. It's one of the reasons why I got into traveling and into, it's also one of the themes of my kind of writing, things that interest me as a travel writer. But of course, cultures are different and value systems are different, and there can be barriers there that come up. And certainly, I mean, one of the trips to Nigeria that I recount was to go and get married, because my wife is Nigerian. And if you want to talk about throwing yourself into a sort of unfamiliar cultural situation, getting married is about the most extreme experience you can have. In many ways, it was absolutely fine, because I'd already spent some time working in other parts of West Africa and become fascinated by the culture and the history and the art and the music and things. So in many ways, it was easier for me than it might be for the next kind of Westerner or something. But of course, when anxiety started to take hold during that trip, and in that trip, I'd call it a sort of a low-level manageable anxiety. I was dealing with it badly, and I, and again, this is something else that I kind of get into in the book, which was to basically, as soon as it was sort of polite, I would start drinking beer basically in the afternoon,
okay.
And it would give me some. I've now learned my lesson, as you get older, hopefully you get wiser in some ways. And I've now realised that actually, yes, you might get some short, medium-term relief from that, but you're only going to feel worse the next day. I mean, it's sort of like, is the Pope a Catholic and the bears do naughty things in woods,
indeed, yes.
But you can know that, and you can be told that, and you can be told that by, but whether you abide by it is sort of something else, isn't it? But yeah, so that did not go down very well with my in-laws to be, because, as if there aren't enough stereotypes about Westerners who go abroad and drink too much. And it's not really in Nigeria, people drink alcohol, but not to nobody drinks like
yes.
British people, or dare I say even Americans, Europeans. It's a Western sort of way of approaching this. And I think also when I tried to explain, my wife was very understanding because she's lived in the UK and she understands the culture here. I said, look, I just have to say to you, it's nothing. I'm not getting cold feet. I love you. I want to get married to you. But for some reason, and it's not rational because it never is, I'm struggling here. Every day is a struggle because I'm kind of, my heart's thumping and my throat's dry, and I'd had is it something physical? That's always the first thing. You have all the tests, they come out okay. So it must be something psychical or mental. She was understanding, but it was difficult to explain that to her, to my, as I say, my in-laws to be, and my kind of Igbo is her ethnic group, my sort of Igbo friends and associates, because for whatever reason, culturally, mental health is it's thought about in a different way. It's not really, anxiety is not really seen. I think we have to think about, even in our societies, talking about Europe or the UK, it's only a very, that taboo has it hasn't even been fully lifted, I think, but it's been slightly lifted. That's only recently happened, so that people can actually talk about their mental health issues. You couldn't do that when I'm 46, and there's no way you could have done that. People like to think growing up in the 90s was a time of relative progress and stuff, but I just think of the jokes that used to be so common.
It was loaded. It was a time where everyone was reading Loaded magazine. That wasn't a time of mental health. It was have a couple of beers, stick Wonderwall on, watch Gaza, and have some more beers and look at the, and it was the lads' mag. It wasn't exactly Sensitive and New Man. Because we were that was the 90s. We did not talk about mental health in the 90s. Right.
Yeah, you remember it too. Yeah. And going further back, my parents' generation, you certainly didn't talk about it in the 50s. Men certainly didn't.
Yeah.
And women, if they did, would be, again, stereotyped as being sort of, highly strung or, often in quite sexist terms, or women get anxious and they're weak and therefore, but men have to keep a stiff upper lip and do that. And one of the things that really, I thought gave me the confidence to sort of, carry on and do the book was that I'm in a writers group with some friends and colleagues, and a retired colleague, an emeritus professor of some note, who's a woman and sort of old, sort of one of my parents' generation. She said it's really refreshing to see a man writing about anxiety and really being honest about anxiety. And I was like, oh, okay, good. Well, okay, yeah, then maybe there's something there, and maybe it will help other people to kind of be a bit more open about their mental health issues.
The thing is, though, is with stuff like this and anxiety, it tends to be sort of isolation is always the killer with this. People spending a lot of time in front of their computers, and especially men have a history of not looking after themselves, and people detaching from the world. But you're not detaching from the world because you're in the middle of the sight smells, the sensory overload that is Nigeria or Manila or Los Angeles. So it just goes to show that there isn't a stereotypical thing. Basically, we're looking at triggers here, aren't we, Tom? Something can set it off. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to. No. It doesn't follow a pattern. But literally, it can be a noise, a colour, a situation, and then you've got to be really careful about you don't self-medicate, but also how you deal with it, and you don't end up in the back of an ambulance trying to explain that you're not some weird white guy who's knows all the words to common people by pulp.
Well, in somewhere like the Philippines, they would appreciate that because there's certainly a kind of subculture of people who are sort of obsessed with kind of British music, particularly from the sort of 80s and 90s. And my Filipino friends, when I go there, they often get me to bring them a kind of Cure T-shirt or something from the UK that they can't get in the Philippines. And they know more about that, my music from my own country than I do, actually. So it's one of those strange cultural oddities. But you're quite right, yeah, that sort of... Yeah, that we know that the mental health issues, certainly of younger people, are absolutely caused by too much time alone, too much time in front of screens and phones. I think a lot of us could have predicted that some years back with the beginnings of the internet. People we tend to do this, don't we, as human beings? We tend to rush into some new technology and think that it's wonderful and great and it will solve all our problems. And then a few years down the line, some people start analysing the situation and thinking, hang on, why are there these problems now? Has it got anything to do? Oh, yes, maybe So hence we've got these laws coming in around the world to, stop children using. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't. Good luck with that. I don't know how that's going to work. But yeah. So you're quite right about isolation and not engaging with the world. But then, ironically, too much exposure, too much stimulation, and too much interaction can also cause anxiety. So it's a difficult balance to strike, I think.
And the other interesting thing is, of course, is that when you go to a culture, I mean, here's a thought. You've written about travel, so you kind of do a deep dive on it. And watching social media and watching kind of what 20-somethings do on social media or travel-wise, I'm struck by the fact that everywhere China kind of looks the same in these things. So I can't tell if you're in Dubai, Bali, Marbella, St. Bart's, because you're all drinking the same things, you're all wearing the same clothes, you're listening to the same music, you're on the same beach club. And the architecture, if I see one more bleeding pool-top skyscraper, I think I'll throw my Bacardi Breezer out the window.
Well, I suppose that's to do with globalization, isn't it? The shopping mall that I live in Portsmouth in the south of England, and the shopping mall that we have here is uncannily similar to one in the Philippines that I've been to, and ones in the Middle East that I've been to. I suppose there's all kinds of economic and political reasons for that. But yes, I think this it does surprise me, and again, it might be a source of anxiety for some people that they feel under pressure to travel somewhere and then present a sort of image of perfection, even if where they've gone to hasn't necessarily been perfect. And you're quite right. I'm struck by, how similar. I mean, I'm not a big user of Instagram or anything like that. I'm too old really for that nonsense. But, I'd have friends who are younger and interested in photography and imagery and things like that. And I do sometimes wonder, did you need to go all that way to this place? Which
I have a pathological dislike of Bali, and I've never been. But if I see, and people have been saying it's wonderful and blah blah blah. But if I see anybody else on a beach in Bali or getting there, sorting their whatever's out, or and my goddaughters love Bali, and they're all there doing the bit in the fountains. But it's like, okay, but and I know it's unreasonable, but that's just my thing. Perhaps you don't need to go to the other side of the world to find yourself. And your book, I mean, you've done the hard work, Tom. You've rather than going, oh, fine, I'll have another sherbet and have another sundowner, because you got to do the work on yourself, and you've got to look in, and because something's triggering this. So rather than saying, well, I'm never going to get out the front door again, you decided to look at some of the fundamentals of your life.
Yeah, and trying to do that. There's potentially two categories of I don't want to say solutions, because it's not something that I've solved, and there's no easy answers, but I think certainly I've learned along the way to do certain kinds of remedies that are immediate. You can, breathing is really important, breathing in through the nose and out through your mouth, which when you first start doing it feels incredibly unnatural and kind of annoying and strange, but it does start to, you get more oxygen into the brain. It starts to relax you, and that certainly saved me a few times. That's certainly a lot better than just trying to sort of drink away your sorrows or your fear, And then things like meditation have been really useful. I talk about the importance of creativity as well, getting into what are called flow states. That kind of feeling, I think most people associate it with childhood, where you're allowed to go off and play. I mean, again, I'm dating myself, because nowadays, I mean, I have a small baby, and there's no way we're going to let her, because there's cars everywhere and, you know, and it's dangerous. But I was very lucky to grow up in a sort of suburban, slightly rural place where me and my brother could just go off and play all day. My mum would call us in for tea in the evening. And you lose track of everything. You're just in your imaginary world. You lose track of time until your mum calls you in. And you're just, nothing else matters. You're just engrossed in this, in playing whatever it is, you know, pretending to be doctors and nurses or whatever it might be.
It's not even 12 o'clock yet, Tom. Let's say cowboys and whatever, okay? And first.
Oh, okay, right. Sorry. Yeah, yeah, I forgot about the so I was kind of sensitivities. But so I think as adults we can get into that kind of these flow states by you know, doing something creative. People talk about, you know, playing an instrument. For me, it's writing. For other people, it's painting or drawing. And you get into a mental space where you forget about your worries and your strife, as the old song goes. And that is when you emerge from that flow state. And, you know, again, I talk about incidents where that's really helped me in situations of anxiety. You kind of, you've got some distance, you've got some objectivity, and you're back into it. You think, well, it's not that bad, is it? It can't be that bad because I've just spent a good half an hour writing, and that seemed to ease things up for me. And so I'm better equipped to go back into the world and deal with whatever kind of slings and arrows are coming down at you on your trip.
Is it breaking it down into manageable time? So getting through the next half hour rather than getting overwhelmed? Is that what you were doing, or is it literally taking time out from yourself via a podcast or some music or some writing or some whatever you're doing creatively?
I think when you're facing anxiety in a travel situation and you're somewhat remote from, you know, the usual, you know, getting to see a doctor that kind of understands your situation. You don't have the normal resources that you would have at home that would help you. Then I do think it is about trying to, you know, take these measures in the short term to try and kind of relieve you. But I think in terms of the, you know, dealing with this in the long term, you do have to do some bigger work on yourself. And I mean, it's quite a tall order, but I would recommend, you know, writing a book about this and really trying to do a deep dive into my own experience, but also the experiences of other people as well, because I didn't want this just all to be about me. I interviewed other people with their own kind of brands of travel anxiety. And you find that, yeah, by doing that, by sort of just trying to think about, well, what is it over the course of my life? What things haven't I dealt with? What kind of grief am I still kind of, you know, that I'm repressing? Or what is it that may have happened in my childhood or early on in my life that could explain where I'm at now? And doing some of that work has definitely been helpful. So I think even if you don't write a book about it, you know, trying to just write it down or articulate it in some way. You know, I dare say people might make TikTok videos or write scripts, or there might be ways of drawing or painting your experiences. And
I would recommend all of the above, apart from TikTok. If you write anything down just for yourself, it's the discipline of doing it, because you don't want to go out, because there's nothing worse than somebody going out on social media and going, you know, this is what I'm feeling at the moment. It's like, yeah, okay, fine, do the work and we'll get back to you in about 6 months time. You know what I mean?
Well, it may help some people, and I don't know, maybe I'm just trying to appeal to the younger generation for whom, I mean, I don't know, you know, I teach creative writing. My day job is, you know, I'm an academic, and it's not always easy to get kids to pick up a pen and write, but they've got devices that they'll type on, and so you have to kind of work with, you know, the sort of tech that they're used to. So
this is a quill, children, right? So, well. What are you hoping? What are you hoping that people are going to? It's part sort of memoir, travelogue, and part, if you like, not to get all American, sort of part you're not alone situation.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so, because I think just because the more I spoke to other people and the more research I did for the book, the more I found out that I wasn't alone in terms of these experiences. But I do have to stress that I think everyone's, and this is going to sound a bit cliched and American, everyone's journey is different, you know, like obviously the physical journey they make, but their sort of trajectory, if that's a better word, and their experience of travel anxiety is is always going to be different. So there's not going to be. You can learn, I think, from other people, and maybe people will appreciate and learn something from my book. But at the same time, there's no substitute for sort of doing that work on yourself. And
there's no sort of one size fits all situation to this, is it? I mean, everybody's got their own thing to it.
Yeah.
The book is called The Years of Travelling Anxiously, Surviving Fear and Panic All Over the World. It is by Tom Sykes, who is speaking today. You can order it via our own virtual bookstore. Tom, where are you jetting off to next then? What's your next travel trip then?
Oh, good question. I'm hoping to go back to the Philippines, soon enough, because that's a place that I have, I love. I lived there for a period some years ago, and I try and go back there because I'm fascinated by it, but also I have kind of academic contacts there. I do work with colleagues at universities there, and because there's 7,000 islands, there's always somewhere new to explore, and they all have their own sort of different identities. So every time I go, I have to go to Manila, and I have to go to the capital city and do the kind of work that I have to do. But I try and see some part of that amazing archipelago that I've not seen before.
Just stay clear of Mindanao and you'll be okay, basically.
Yes. Well, parts of Mindanao are okay, actually. Yeah, it's not, but yeah, like anywhere, you have to be careful and selective about where you travel.
If you make it to Marbella, I'll buy you a cafe con leche and we won't get so...
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah.
The book is called The Years of Travelling Anxiously, Surviving Fear and Panic All Over the World. It's by Tom Sykes. Tom, you said you don't do the social media. Is there a website people can find you at and contact you via?
Well, I do Facebook, which is a bit outdated. In fact, I heard all of my students say he's so old and outdated that he's still got a Facebook account. But I have a Facebook account because I started years ago. But I have a blog website type thing which is tomgsykes.co.uk. But if you just Google Tom Sykes and put travel or anxiety, there'll be stuff from the publisher's website that might be interesting as well. So,
I'm sure it will be. The book is called The Years of Travelling Anxiously, Surviving Fear and Panic All Over the World. It's by Tom Sykes. Tom, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed chatting with you.